In a town, inside a house around the corner, a family was encouraging a girl as she wore a new formal dress. The clothes were expensive, the mother said. Expensive clothes change everything. The girl's brother also praised her. The girl's name was Min Kyung. Min Kyung was thinking that she had to go to work for 52 weeks, 5 days a week, which is 260 times. Even if she wore it every 3 days, that is 87 times in 3 days. And if she wears it every 3 days for 3 years, it's like spending 1,001 per day. She was calculating the expenses it would take, as it was the time when she was going to the office for the first time. Her mother was worried if she would adapt to the work culture. As her mother knew, work life is different from school life. Sometimes things happen without reasons like irregularities in the company, forced overtime, internal disagreements. So her mother asked her to engrave these things in her mind, that she must absolutely obey what her supervisor says, and she shouldn't complain. Second, say what others want to hear rather than what she wants to say. And last but not least, smile. Smile whenever you make eye contact with anyone. 10 years later, Min Kyung obeyed her mother's words like anything, spoke cautiously to her supervisors, managed her expressions perfectly, and also worked like a superhuman. She has achieved top scores in the entrance exam, top scores in training evaluation, and top scores in task completion. She exceeded in every task and rapidly advanced on the fast track for promotion. She became the youngest assistant manager, but until yesterday, she was informed to be made a secretary. She'll be secretary and assistant to Lee Seop in the trading team. In her mind, she had several thoughts like she worked hard for 10 years like a dog in the company without even complaining for a while, and she was rewarded with a demotion. She asked if she made a mistake at work and asked the reason for her demotion. She was assigned this task because she was the only one who can handle Lee Seop. And in return, she'll receive an interesting proposal from Song Bi-ki. It was an order given by TK Group's leader, T Sehwan, who is soon to become the president of TK Group. This was an all-or-nothing situation for Min Kyung, which means either the best opportunity or the biggest crisis in her life. Now enters director Lee Seop. Seems like he has just come back from a vacation with some expensive brand shopping bags. His assistant came to pick him up at the airport. He asked the assistant to take him to the hotel, but the assistant informed him that he was told to bring him directly to the strategic planning division. Jun Seop called Lee, but he just disconnected the call. However, after a minute, he realized he made a mistake. Then the driver of the car got a call from manager Kang. Lee recognized her. The assistant who was driving gave the call directly to Lee. Lee asked her why she was assigned as his secretary. Kyung asked Lee to question this to the managing director. Lee was sleeping in his room. He was wearing just shorts. His phone rang and he woke up. The assistant was at his door with Kyung, and she said on the phone that she is entering the room as she was running out of time. Lee rushed towards the door as he fell down, and when the doors opened, Kyung and the assistant saw him half naked. As Kyung entered the room, she saw Lee half naked. Quickly, she slammed the door and went outside. After a while, Lee wore a t-shirt and came outside. Kyung informed him that 15 minutes were left for them to leave. Lee informed them he was not at all ready to leave as he didn't take a bath, was hungry, and didn't have clothes as well. But it seemed like Kyung and the assistant came prepared. They showed him the formal clothes they brought with them. And for breakfast, they prepared ham and cheese sandwiches without vegetables as he prefers. Kyung informed Lee that she'll provide the detailed schedule and explanation as they move. Lee was irritated by this micromanagement and asked her if she is going to follow him to his private place as well. He warned her that he lives comfortably in his private place, sometimes without clothes as well. Kyung asked if he was uncomfortable as she was a woman. Lee laughed very hard at this statement, but Kyung was still on her schedule timetable and informing Lee about the time left. As they knew that Lee would not have taken a bath yet, they prepared a wet towel as well. He asked them to wait as he gets ready. Lee noticed Kyung's characteristics and found it impressive that she hasn't changed a bit from the last 10 years since the time they met. But he still doesn't like the way she subtly gets on his nerves, as she always used to be first in the office and Lee used to come second. He worked very hard to live up to the name of TK Group's successor. From his childhood, he came first rank in all aspects. But because of Kyung, he started being second as the first position was always secured by her. Coming back to the present day, Lee was ready. Kyung in her mind was thinking that even she didn't like him from day one. From the moment they were assigned to the same group, she hated him. Lee asked her to quit while she was ahead as a deputy director. But his talks didn't bother her, and she informed that they were now exactly 7 minutes over the scheduled time. They all started moving towards Chairman T Sehwan. But as they were moving ahead in the car, in her mind, Kyung admitted that Lee was just her type when it comes to looks. 1 week ago, TK Group President T Siwon called Kyung and initially praised her a lot for her hard work. He mentioned hearing great things about her achievements and loyalty towards the company. Then, he assigned her the task of being Lee's assistant. As she was about to say something, T Siwon told her about her siblings and how promising young athletes they are, indirectly offering them sponsorship. Kyung realized this was the offer director T Jun Seob was pointing towards. She was a bit afraid of the president. She convinced herself that she did a good job and thought about her siblings. Coming back to the present date when they were leaving for the office, Kyung realized that she needs to get a hold of herself and learn how to handle T Lee Seob somehow for her family. She started her first day as T Lee Seob's secretary. The president was the grandfather of Lee. The president was a completely different person in front of Lee. It seemed like only Lee could make the president seem so nice. The president then asked Kyung if she was doing her job properly. He also informed her that she arrived late today, to which she replied that she'll correct herself. Her body language changed as she was afraid of President Siwon. Lee noticed this. Siwon asked Lee to pay a visit to Songbiki for the time being and give him the product briefing. And as Lee was the core of TK Company, the president wanted the best production personnel to assist him, and in his belief, Kyung was the perfect one. Lee started to say something to his grandfather about Kyung. As he started saying she was too personal, she noticed it and tried to stop him as she didn't want to get fired on the first day of her job. He continued talking, but Kyung grabbed his hand, and Lee looked at her face. She was scared and worried. But it turned out he was not that bad, and he changed the topic and thanked his grandpa for selecting the assistant for him. As Kyung reached her house with all the stress she handled today, Kyung's roommate and his twin siblings welcomed her. Both twins were wearing TK Company-sponsored t-shirts, and they were preparing a good meal as a celebration. Kyung took a bath and was now feeling fresh. Also, she got to know that Hyun Seong-appa was coming today. Hyun Seong-appa arrived. A handsome-looking gentleman came in and said, "Long time no see." Kyung was happy to see Hyun Seong. He told her that she has not changed a bit, and Kyung noticed that he said that because she was still wearing the same character t-shirt which she used to love in her childhood. They were like a family, they grew up in the same neighborhood, which made them close to each other. Hyun Seong was Kyung's senior and later became a reliable older brother who provided her with immense support. All of the members present in the house started having beer. Hyun was not having it. Hyun informed that he was moving back to Korea and was assigned to TK's trading team. Hyun asked Kyung which team she was on. She replied that she started working in the trading team today. Her roommate asked about how she felt working closely with the prince of TK Group. She also informed about his childhood and how he caught everybody's attention, but as he avoided media exposure and suddenly disappeared from the public eye, people only heard rumors of him being handsome. Kyung's roommate asked Kyung to get a photograph of him. They thought that as he was her assistant now she would be on an escalator of promotion, but she informed that it was the opposite and she would be lucky if they don't fire her. She informed everyone that the president hates her. Everybody was shocked to hear this, and Hyun asked her to relax and also take care of her health. She thought if his boss could be half as nice as brother Hyun was. Then she received messages from the president. The next morning when she reached Lee's house, Lee asked her why she was late by 30 minutes. She explained that somehow the password was changed for the entrance, knowing very well that Lee could have changed it to create trouble for her. She also brought coffee for him, but he strictly denied it and said that he drinks coffee from Kenya, that too blended in a certain way, and asked her to throw this coffee in the drain. Lee decided to relax even more, and when he got to know that the meeting is with director Jun Seob, he decided not to go and asked to cancel the schedule. Later when Kyung and Lee were discussing the meeting, she informed him about the work assigned to him, but he was annoyed by the fact that all the tough work was given to him and all the credit is being taken away by the director. As he lies down in his chair, Kyung thinks of the days when Lee used to be energetic and the time when she used to consider him worthy of being called the crown prince of TK. He asked her what they were going to do as she was assigned as his assistant, but she said that she is feeling honored to work under him. Lee stood up and told her that her lips were dry and still she dared lying. Kyung was feeling weird about this and thinking in her mind if she is going to be fine. 10 years ago, Lee's grandfather, the president of TK Company, asked him to have a close look at Kyung to understand if she's pillar-worthy material or just someone with a sharp mind. Lee was always admired by the women around him. It was not new for him to grab attention from people around him. All the women and girls used to find him very attractive. Also, one of the major reasons was that he was the grandson of the chairman. It didn't matter to him too much because these women were not able to look straight into his eyes. While he was resting in a corner where it was quiet and peaceful, he saw Kyung coming his way, and she was the one who looked straight into his eyes. She looked him in the eye and left, which made him feel oddly uneasy. Coming back to the present date, Kyung asked permission to enter Lee's cabin, and before he could ask her to come in, she entered the room. He noticed the same look she had 10 years ago. She brought him all the files that need to be signed by him. He was amazed by the fact that she organized it perfectly well. Lee said that even if he works hard, there will be nothing left, and no one will acknowledge it. Also, the company won't fall apart just because he was not there. But Kyung replied, saying that he was absolutely essential for the trading division. Also, she mentioned that in the past 10 years, there is no one who worked as hard as he did for TK Group. He heard her and asked her to leave the cabin, and he'll check the reports later. Lee was having a word with his colleague. He asked Lee that he said he won't be working, and as he came back, he was on top of his works. Lee clarified that it was Kyung's doing, not his. He informed Lee about how it was a good idea assigning Kyung as his assistant. Lee asked him about how he was able to transfer her to being his assistant, and if he has found some weaknesses. Lee's colleague informed about how Kyung's twin siblings got a sponsorship from the company as their performance was not just enough for them to get this sponsorship, so they came up with this. Also, if the offer comes from Song Biki, Kyung couldn't refuse the position. Also, they figured out that Kyung's parents run a modest noodle restaurant. Lee asked him how they could use her weakness to transfer her to become his assistant, as this will also increase her workload. The colleague replied that she is doing just fine. It was him who was more worried about her. Lee thought to himself, was he worried about Kyung? Or was it just her touch and pleading look in her eyes that felt unfamiliar? On a sunny and warm afternoon, Lee was enjoying his coffee on a comfortable sofa. Suddenly, he heard the walking sound of Kyung. As the sound increased, Kyung slammed the door and entered Lee's cabin. She asked if he enjoyed his break and started explaining the schedule briefing to him. For Lee, his life became a thriller movie every time he heard footsteps approaching. His heartbeat used to pound like crazy. He was complaining about all this to Kim, his driver. Lee thought that his car was the only place he could relax, but he was wrong. Soon Kyung called on Kim's phone, which was connected to the car. Lee asked Kim to tell her that he was not with him, but she could hear Lee properly and asked him to reach the office as moving out was not in his schedule for today. Kyung was complaining about all of this to her roommate, and she was trying to console Kyung. The doorbell rang, and it was Appa Hyung. He couldn't wait to eat food cooked by Kyung's mother, so he directly came from the office to eat. Soon, Hyung asked Kyung's roommate about the blind date she is going on tomorrow. Both Kyung and her roommate were a bit shocked to know about how Appa knows about all this. Upon asking, he informed them that the guy was the son of the director of J Hospital, and also his elementary school classmate. Appa also informed them that she'd like the M Hotel French restaurant, and he talked about how she was cute and stylish. As he left, Kyung was worried about what to do. 3 days ago, while walking down the street, Kyung's roommate asked her for a favor to go on the blind date on her behalf, because she finally got the ticket for her favorite band show, and she couldn't miss it. She begged Kyung so much and also asked her that she'll be doing all the housework alone for the next 6 months. She pleaded with Kyung so much that she couldn't deny. And now, as Appa told the guy that she was stylish, Kyung was totally opposite of it. She knew nothing about style as she had dedicated her whole life to office work. But her roommate decided to get her ready for the blind date first because she was a fashion expert. Kyung's roommate promised her that she'd completely change her and make her look even more beautiful. Today was the day for the dinner appointment with the director's son from J Hospital. Kyung's roommate was preparing her for the date. She decided to give her a different look and started recording it for her YouTube video. She loved pretending to be a makeup vlogger. She showed different makeup items one by one and tried them on Kyung. She enjoyed doing Kyung's makeup and gave her best to ensure Kyung looked beautiful tonight. When Kyung saw herself in the mirror, even she was shocked, but her roommate asked her to wait for the final look. She started deciding on her outfit as well. Kim was asking Lee about his elementary alumni reunion and wished him well for the weekend before leaving. Lee reached the hotel, the same one Kyung was going to for the blind date on behalf of her roommate. She also arrived at the hotel and found the French restaurant. She met the hospital director's son, Jong. He was flattered to see her, but she couldn't blame him. Kyung was the most beautiful girl out there. Jong asked her if she liked the food, and she said yes to his face, although she hated it inside. Jong asked Kyung for the rooftop lounge, but she declined, saying she had to work tomorrow. After a while, when the dinner was over, she went to the washroom, removed her contact lenses, and felt relieved after removing some makeup. As she was in the hotel for the whole night, she decided to take a break and enjoy tonight, as it had been so long since she was busy with work. She went to the lounge bar. Lee and his friends were drinking there, discussing his love life and how he was still single. They all started teasing him and asking if he had someone in mind, questioning how long he planned to stay single. They all toasted to Lee's love life. While this was going on, he noticed footsteps approaching. Somehow, he knew the sound of these footsteps, and when he looked up, he saw Kyung. When Lee noticed the familiar sound of footsteps, he looked up and was amazed to see Kyung, although she looked different due to makeup and not being in her formal attire. He also noticed that the moment he received Kyung's reply, the woman used her phone. He was shocked to see her. Lee's friend started asking him about what he was looking at and pointed out Kyung as he had been staring at her for a long time. But he said she looked like someone he knew. Kyung ordered the Seoul Night cocktail, as it was famous. She had also heard about it from Jong, so she decided to try it today. Since she was staying in the hotel tonight, she decided to enjoy it to the maximum. She noticed herself in the mirror beside her and praised herself. But suddenly, Jong came back. She was in trouble now, as she wanted to stay away from Jong. But they ended up meeting again. He sat down with her. Lee was constantly looking at her. He also noticed the guy who sat in front of her and questioned himself if he was her boyfriend. Kyung's limit was 1 drink, but Jong ordered 3 to 4 drinks. They started drinking, and Jong started lecturing her about wines and whiskey. Jong got a call from Hyung, Kyung's brother, and she got to know that he was on his way to the hotel. She wanted to leave as soon as possible, but he sat down again. Kyung took the last drink and drank it quickly. Her eyesight started getting blurry. She started feeling dizzy. She stood up from her chair, and Jong tried to make her sit as Hyung was coming to pick her up. Lee saw all of this and came close to them. He asked Jong why he was forcing someone who didn't want to stay with him. Jong told him that he was misunderstanding. Kyung was drunk. She noticed that it was a familiar voice but couldn't see who it was. Lee asked Jong why he was noticing everything and how he forced her to drink. Kyung came close to Lee, and he held her. This was the time they both came close, and she noticed that it was Lee. Lee was so close to her for the first time and became shy, giving her his coat to wear. As she saw him, she started talking about office work, and Lee thought she had lost her mind. He asked Jong how many drinks he gave her. Jong showed him his cards and everything, informing him that they were on a date. Jong told him that Lee was the one who interrupted their date and asked him who he was. Lee informed him that he was Kyung's colleague. Kyung tried to talk, and while doing so, Lee's coat fell down. He tried to pick it up, and Kyung also tried to help, but her clothes were a bit off. He was now more worried about her, as this place was filled with oddballs. Jong was confirmed when Lee called her Kyung. But then Hyung came and explained what happened. He came close and greeted Lee, also informing him that he was the legal advisor for TK Group. Kyung also noticed that Hyung Seong Appa was here. She hid behind Lee and grabbed his hand tightly. Hyung asked Lee if he'll be taking care from here and taking Kyung home. Lee stopped him and said that as she was his subordinate, he couldn't entrust her well-being to a stranger. He asked about his connection with Kyung. Hyung informed that they were very close childhood friends. He asked Kyung to come with him and said he wouldn't be saying anything to her, also asking her to be careful with drinks. Hyung apologized to Lee for causing so much trouble and asked him if he'd give a proper introduction next time. Hyung tried to remove Lee's coat, but Lee stopped him and put it on Kyung again, closing all the buttons and asking her to give the coat back tomorrow. Lee found something weird with Hyung. Kyung said that she wanted to spend her night in the hotel, so Hyung said he'd escort her to the room. Lee got worried and asked him if he was her boyfriend. Hyung said that it's not better if the executive director drops her to the room and asked Lee if something was going on between them. The next morning when Lee woke up, he wondered if he had been dreaming last night. He bumped into assistant Kyung. While washing his face, he still thought about last night and also wondered what would have happened after they both left. He noticed that Kyung called him Appa. Lee got ready and thought that it was none of his business. In the parking lot, Lee and Kyung met again. She wished him good morning, and Lee asked her if she slept well, as she didn't seem to have a hangover as well. At this particular moment, he didn't want to interact with her. At lunchtime, when Kyung asked Lee if the food was ready, he declined to eat and said he had no appetite, asking her to cancel all his meetings for the day. When she left the room, Kyung realized that she needed to return the coat as well. She was confused between two thoughts, whether she should forget what happened or offer a proper apology. Lee sat in the car and asked Kim to just drive. Kim understood the situation and decided to take him to the riverside. Kim knew that Lee calls him whenever he has a lot on his mind, so he decided to take him somewhere nice to relax. Kim also informed Lee that Kyung had told him that there's nothing better than having a run by the river to clear someone's thoughts. Lee was shocked to know that Kyung exercises as well. Kim mentioned that exercising was one of her hobbies, and she runs up to 10 kilometers a day. They praised her for how she manages time between her busy schedule in the office and still manages everything. Lee was going deeper into his thoughts, but he asked Kim to shut up and just drive. In the evening, inside Lee Seob's house, Lee was sitting with his younger sister Soo Jin, who was asking if he got time from his busy schedule to spend time with his family. June was also sitting there. Lee asked him why he went to Songbiki, and June informed him that as he was getting engaged to Woo, he had to see the chairman. Lee's sister found it cool and romantic how he was taking so much care about his love. She started worrying about her brother Lee, about how he is always busy with his work and never been in a relationship. He wanted to get some fresh air, so he stood up and started walking out. On his way out, he asked June to join him as he wanted to discuss something. As they both stood outside, June opened a beer and took a sip. Lee found it weird the way he was drinking. June asked him the reason for calling him out. Lee mentioned that there was a reason for it. Upon asking what, Lee informed him about assistant Kyung and asked him to take her back into his team, but June straight away denied, stating he had enough qualified members in his team and it seemed that she was doing her job perfectly. June asked for one good reason why they should send her back to his team. Lee was unable to give a single reason. Lee mentioned that working as his secretary was not suitable for someone as multi-talented as her. June suggested keeping her in his team for now as she was doing well and asked if Lee had any other problem with her. The next morning, Lee's sister banged on his door and showed him the news about his dating rumors. The incident in the lounge when Kyung was drunk seemed to have been captured by some people, and pictures of them together were posted on social media, which went viral as Lee was a public figure. His sister was enjoying this and asked him to explain. She started making comments as if she were reading the news headline. She asked him who she was and made a guess that she was assistant manager Kyung. Lee was shocked and agreed, asking how she found out about her. But it seemed she made a wild guess, and it was correct. She was happy with this situation, thinking that finally her brother was getting into a relationship. She started speculating about their relationship, which was nothing but a rumor for now. Lee informed his sister that he would be dating someone with whom he would fall in love at first sight. She started teasing her brother, and as she left, she informed him that she would be supporting his love life and also took his credit card. Later, when Kyung met Lee, she apologized for whatever happened, as she knew it happened because of her. Lee told her to relax, as she didn't have to apologize for this, and he admitted that he made a mistake in interfering in her life. Kyung said she would do her best to stop this news from spreading publicly and make sure that his reputation was not damaged anymore. She apologized again. He changed the topic and asked if there was a meeting for them to attend. Kyung told him that the car was ready as they were moving down in the lift. Lee was lost in his own thoughts. As the lift came down, the doors opened, and as they moved out of the building, they saw cameras flashing at them from every side. But somehow, it made Lee feel sick. He was breathing hard, and his face color changed. All the limbs of his body were trembling. Maybe this was a sign of a panic attack. Kyung held him, and Kim brought the car, asking her to get inside. They rushed towards the hospital, and while on the way, Lee kept a hand on his chest. Kyung was constantly asking him if he was doing fine. He was still breathing heavily and lost consciousness completely, falling onto Kyung's lap. Since his childhood, Lee was informed that he was the heir to TK Group. Everyone in this world was watching him. From childhood, people were keeping an eye on him. He was asked to be perfect every time and not let down his guard. He was told to engrave in his memory that he was the face and future of TK Group. It happened long ago when they were taking a family picture and Lee saw the flashlight. He lost consciousness. And it happened again today. He gained consciousness in the hospital and woke up. When he woke up, he saw that Kyung was sleeping outside on the couch, way past her working hours. As she woke up, she held Lee and brought him back to his bed, asking him to rest properly. Lee asked her if he was doing fine, but she didn't listen and made him sit in his bed. Lee asked her to go home as she must be exhausted by now. But she said she voluntarily stayed in the hospital as she was not responsible enough for managing the CEO's case in advance. She asked Lee if he had been missing his meals a lot these days, so she brought him food. Kyung asked Lee to eat everything, even if he didn't like the taste of it. She asked Lee not to worry because she made sure that not even a word from today's incident was leaked. Lee thanked her, and at the same time, Kyung's stomach made a sound, indicating that she was hungry too. Lee asked her to get her meal, saying that he wouldn't eat if Kyung didn't eat. While they were eating, Lee said that he thought Kyung was a robot until now because now he saw her eating like a human being. And with shaggy hair, she looked more human. Lee informed that it was his first time losing consciousness after the age of 20. He also mentioned that his parents were strict, and from an early age, he was asked to be perfect. He informed how he always had to be cautious as he didn't want a company to lose its reputation because of a word that came from his mouth. He also informed how he got into this situation with the flashlight. He came to a conclusion and asked Kyung to relax sometimes. Kyung realized that he was facing more difficulties than she thought. As she was leaving, she informed that she would be meeting early in the morning in the office. Lee thought it would be too late and asked her to sleep here. He instantly regretted his words and pondered what he was doing. Kyung asked if there was anything else he would like, but Lee denied and asked her to leave. As she departed, Lee contemplated what was going on with him and why he suddenly started acting so weird. Even though he had a good night's sleep, his body was completely exhausted as soon as he woke up, and Kyung was back at the hospital. She was busy with her office-related meetings and tasks, and Lee noticed how active she was, even though she must be exhausted after everything that happened last night. But he concluded that it was because she was Kyung, after all. He also realized that he had said a lot of useless words yesterday, maybe due to his condition, as he became incredibly emotional. Kyung informed him that all the meetings were done, and she had also cleared his schedule for the rest of the day due to his physical condition. Lee thanked her. Soon, Lee's sister Soo-jin arrived, shocking Lee, who asked her the reason for her visit. She answered that it was obvious, given her brother's collapse and hospitalized, that she would visit. She also informed him that their mother had sent her. Lee was worried that their mother also knew about his condition. Soo-jin met Kyung, and they both greeted each other. Soo-jin also mentioned that she had already seen her before when she won first place in the company's sports competition. Soo-jin asked Kyung to go for coffee, and they both started talking about yesterday's incident. Soo-jin asked Kyung if she might be surprised to see her brother collapse. Kyung informed her that she was worried before, but seeing him fine now reassured her. Soo-jin explained that it was not strange for her brother to collapse at any moment. Soo-jin also gave Kyung some family background, revealing that their father was a very greedy person who, despite his desires, was not proficient enough to gain attention. This led him to exploit his son to consolidate his position in the TK group. Consequently, her brother lived up to their father's expectations and always tried his best to get seriously recognized. At the age of 20, her brother Jun Seop returned, and Soo-jin provided a little background story about him. When Lee learned that he was not the sole heir to the TK company, he not only spent his childhood diligently but also had to devote his 20s to avoiding being eliminated by Jun Seop. However, due to a mistake made by their father, Jun ended up acquiring more than half of the company, leaving Lee feeling as though his world had collapsed. Kyung and Soo-jin shared a good bond together. Soo-jin urged Kyung to help Lee take a break and go on vacation. Soo-jin was so insistent that Kyung agreed to consider it. Soon, the four of them were in the car, Lee, Kyung, Kim, and Soo-jin, on their way to vacation. Soo-jin was excited about this, and Kyung made sure that she would make Lee have fun. Assistant Kim was responsible for organizing the recreation department in elementary, middle, and high school. He was appointed as a representative of the Department of Automotive Engineering at an appropriate university. He was the president of a self-made car club, etc. And to acknowledge his hard work so far, he was hereby appointed as a commanding knight who would lead this journey. They also booked great accommodation for their stay. They reached their destination and found it exactly the same as it was shown in the images on the website. Kim showed the ladies their room and showed Lee his room. There were only 2 rooms, and now Lee had to share his room with Kim. He was not used to sharing a room. They started unpacking stuff. After a while, Kim and Lee were ready to go out, and Soo-jin was just waiting for the ladies to come down. When the ladies came down, they both were dressed really well. Kyung was again looking fabulous. Lee asked about the dress, so Soo-jin told him that she was trying to create an interesting holiday atmosphere. When they went outside, they decided to split up in pairs and move. Soo decided to go with him and do some shopping and asked the 2 of them to please find themselves some room to have fun here by looking for beautiful, interesting places nearby. Kyung and Lee were left alone. They decided to go for a walk at nearby places. Kyung asked Lee if he liked such forest paths. It was Lee's first time doing this, so he was not sure. Kyung informed about her childhood days when they used to have a mountain like this near her house. The mountain behind it was their playground for her and her friends. They used to go to the mountain together and enjoy the flowers, catch insects, and play in the river. And the scent of this forest was bringing back beautiful childhood memories for Kyung. They also saw ripe strawberries, and Kyung plucked one and ate it. It was something new for Lee to eat something directly from a tree. She took a strawberry from her hand and put it in Lee's mouth. He found the taste very bitter and sour. Kyung realized she must have given him an immature one. For a while, they both wandered in the forest, crossing a small lake, seeing new flowers. Kyung also made a ring from some flower and put it on Lee's finger. He was happy. Kyung had never seen his such expressions before. They sat on a stone and started talking about how they both needed to relax. Lee was happy with this trip. He was enjoying it as it was his first time exploring something like this. Suddenly, after a while, rain started. They both ran away to find shelter. Lee held her hand and asked her to be careful. Luckily, they found a bus stop nearby with a roof. Lee saw that Kyung was shivering from the cold, so he gave her his shirt. He asked her if Kim would be here soon, so meanwhile, wear this shirt. Kyung asked if he must be trembling from the cold more than her due to his condition, but he said he was fine. She touched him and noticed that he was warm. Lee said it was because they were running before. She thought he had a fever as his face was turning red, but little did she know it was because she touched him. Soon, Kim and Soo came with the car and picked them up. They sat in the car and started talking about the sudden rain. But Lee was quiet. When they came back to the place they booked, in the evening they all were preparing food. They all were having the time of their life, gossiping, taking pictures. There were giggles in the atmosphere. At night, Lee was standing outside the hotel and was staring at the stars. He still had the flower ring which Kyung gave him. Suddenly, Kyung also came outside. She was looking for him. He informed her that he wanted to get some fresh air, so he came out. They sat on the terrace afterward and started talking. Kyung told him about the irreplaceable fun she had today. Also, she informed him how overwhelmed she was with non-stop work and how she didn't realize the need for rest. Lee agreed with what she just said. Lee also felt that he was also holding back too many things. Kyung informed him about how she was well in studies and due to family economic background she had to work dedicatedly. Lee praised her working skills and hard work and told her that she's not supposed to be working under him as an assistant. Kyung said she'll do her best till the time he reaches the top, and she'll support him always. Kyung's phone rang, and she excused Lee and walked away to talk on the phone. Lee noticed that it was the same Hyung Appa on the phone, but he decided to ignore it. Iseop Romance, Chapter 16. Lee Seop was back with his gentle smile that contained a cold and frightening expression. He was back attending his meetings and everything. Kyung was walking behind him, explaining his upcoming schedules and meetings. She informed him that he would have dinner with Kim Joo-gu, CEO of the N Corporation, at 5 p.m. Also, he had a reservation at Spa starting at 8 in the evening. Kyung noticed that after returning from that trip, he began to behave like a different person than usual. The atmosphere around him became like a harsh winter more than the usual cold. Kyung told herself that he was like this from the beginning. While they were sitting in the car, Kyung asked her if she would be explaining the schedules to him now. She started informing him about his meetings, timings, and venues. Lee then later gave her a task of resolving something before tomorrow's meeting, and he kept a pile of folders on her desk. She made the documents ready, but Lee asked her that it was not easy for most people to read, so organize and rearrange it again. But as he was giving her more work happily, she was accepting everything and making it correct. Despite the pile of work Lee had thrown at Kyung, she remained firm and unwavering. Her expression didn't waver for even a split second. And the most annoying thing for Lee was that it was bothering him more. It was dinner time. Kyung brought him the food. He asked her that if he doesn't like it, she has to eat the remaining. But Kyung was prepared for this, and she had already ordered another dish for him. When Lee was leaving for his home, he saw that Kyung was eating the food he initially rejected. Lee was shocked to see this, and he came inside and asked her why she was eating this. Kyung replied that he was the one who told her to eat the remaining if he doesn't like it. Lee was getting angry inside. He also asked her if eating somebody's leftover didn't bother her. She said that she already cleaned the spoon. Lee took the glass of bitter juice and drank it in one go. He wiped his mouth and style with the tissue and teased her by asking if she wanted to drink it, and if he should order a new one for her. As he was about to leave, he came close to Kyung and asked her to work harder and left. When he came outside, he was laughing loudly. He saw her angry face, and he found it very funny. He couldn't stop himself from laughing. Lee tapped his feet while sitting in his cabin. Today was the promised day. Kyung entered his cabin and informed him about someone's arrival. Lee stood up and got ready to go. Lee and Kyung met the CEO of law firm Min Jae-ho, who was the lawyer responsible for providing legal advice in the Baekhyang Resort merger and acquisition process. They were joined by Hyung, a lawyer at M&P. Lee expressed his gladness to see him again. The resort merger and acquisition project that TKC&T had been pursuing earnestly had begun. A merger and acquisition task force had also been formed in the resort division. However, Lee was concerned about why this lawyer was sent to TK. He questioned himself, out of many law firms, why particularly this one? He felt disturbed by this. Hyung was busy with her own work. She realized that the short vacation, which felt like a dream, was followed by a huge amount of work. She couldn't figure out how time was passing so fast. Also, she was confused by Lee's attitude towards her. She found it childish. While sitting in his cabin, Lee thought that Kyung looked a bit tired today. He questioned himself, did he exaggerate in his treatment of her? Later, he concluded that as the boss, it was natural for him to assign her tasks. He went to Kyung's cabin and found she was not present there. He also noticed she hadn't eaten her food properly. He went to look for her and reached the main office, where other employees gathered around him. They all praised how well Kyung was handling all the work and making it easier for them. Lee was happy to hear this, smiled, and agreed with their words. Upon asking where she was, the employees said she was with the staff. Lee was annoyed upon hearing this. He reached their office and looked from outside. He saw Kyung was with Hyung and the CEO of the law firm. Lee entered the cabin and asked Kyung if she was busy there. The CEO of the law firm also praised her work and how efficiently she helped them with the data. Lee again agreed with his words and asked Kyung if she should be working on the status of construction orders abroad. She said the data was organized and the relevant departments had collected the expansion status, and she would deliver it by 3 p.m. Lee then asked Hyung to organize such practical data as he had appointed him to do so. He asked if he was seeking help from her because she was a close friend. Hyung apologized for the inconvenience. While leaving, he asked Hyung to do his best and, with a smile on his face, told Hyung not to interfere with his secretary. Back in the day, when Kyung's school was opening and she had to go without Appa, she was worried about how she would manage. But Hyung gave her the confidence that everything was going to be fine, and he was her support system back then. Meanwhile, today Kyung noticed that it was past lunchtime again. She thought the workshop must have been really effective because Lee suddenly started working like crazy. Due to this, she didn't realize how fast her days were passing, but she wasn't sad about it. Feeling hungry and needing something simple to eat quickly, she went to a nearby store. As she was looking for something, Lee approached and asked her what she was doing there. He also grabbed the food packet from her hand and paid for it at the counter. Kyung was wondering what had just happened. Since the weather was good, they decided to sit somewhere. Lee opened a bottle of soft drink and started drinking it in the same style June showed him, mentioning that girls like it when they drink it this way. Unfortunately, he didn't receive the reaction from Kyung that he was expecting, and he began to think to himself about what kind of fool he made of himself in front of Kyung. She opened a chocolate bar, and Lee noticed that it was the same chocolate bar Kyung used to like in school. She liked it because its pricing was reasonable. She mentioned that the chocolate was still very sweet, and as Lee watched her eat the chocolate bar, he used to notice her then, and he was noticing her now as well. After the working hours, Kyung was leaving the office. She stood in front of the elevator when suddenly Hyung came from behind. They met and asked each other about their work. Hyung also took her bag, which was heavy because her laptop was in it. Hyung informed her that he wanted to treat her after their first day of work, but she was always busy, so he never got the chance. They decided to eat at a nearby restaurant. At the restaurant, the food was delivered, and she took the first bite, finding it extremely delicious. Hyung reminded her to take care of her health and not to skip meals just because she was busy. They finished the food and left the restaurant after gossiping about various things. On their way back home while driving, Kyung mentioned that she didn't want to go home because she would just take a bath and sleep, and by the time she woke up, she would have to go to work again. Kyung complimented her, saying that she was a workaholic but also had a vibrant social life. Kyung informed him that now she didn't have time for all this as she was an assistant manager in her company. Hyung mentioned that she was all grown up and really good at her job, and how the TF team leader also complimented her a lot. She suddenly remembered the time when he had to deal with Lee's anger for taking her help. She apologized for it as she didn't expect him to behave in such a way. Hyung said it was fine as it was his fault. She informed Hyung that there's something else going on, as Lee asked her about the relationship she had with Hyung. When she informed him that they were childhood friends, he got upset and left. Kyung assumed that the reason he got so angry was because he thought Hyung was helping her just because they were childhood friends. She asked if something happened at the hotel that day. Hyung remembered the time when he was escorting Kyung to her room, and Lee stopped him and asked about their relationship. When they reached her room, Kyung couldn't unbutton the coat given by Lee, so Hyung helped her. While doing so, he had a strange look on his face. He shouted at Kyung not to drink so much and how dangerous it was to look like that in front of other men. When asked what happened at the hotel, Hyung lied that nothing really happened and changed the topic by saying that Lee's behavior was natural, and he was always like that. Hyung was thinking about Lee while driving and called him bothersome in his mind, feeling like he was being a burden on his task. As Kyung wrapped up her tasks in the office, she engaged in a lengthy phone conversation with Appa, meticulously planning their dinner arrangements for the evening. After settling on Chinese cuisine, she stole a glance at the digital clock displayed on her laptop screen, noting that she still had a generous 30-minute window before her departure time. Upon informing Appa of her treat at the nearby Urengi, her attention was suddenly drawn to Lee, who lingered nearby, evidently having not yet left for the day. Lee divulged his imminent journey to Agen, where he intended to orchestrate energy-related initiatives within the trade department, aligning them with the plant operations of the construction division on a comprehensive, company-wide scale. Additionally, he requested Kyung's assistance in adjusting the schedule for the following day, citing an imperative meeting centered around electricity fundamentals. Taking cognizance of this development, Kyung promptly canceled her dinner plans with Appa, prompting Lee to attempt a facade of concern, albeit earning himself a disdainful glare from her in return. Further probing revealed that Kyung had not yet received the requisite materials from the relevant department, implying an inevitable extension of their work hours. Seated at his desk thereafter, Lee found himself ruminating over the unraveling of his initial scheme. Initially, upon observing Kyung indulging in a chocolate bar instead of a substantial meal, he had harbored intentions of intervening under the pretext of urgent work, subsequently surprising her with a delectable meal to compensate. However, his plan had evidently misfired, leaving him ensnared in an unexpected overtime predicament. Despite his internal musings, Lee remained resolute in his determination to uplift Kyung's spirits through a gastronomic gesture. Approaching her workstation, he presented her with a dining voucher, encouraging her to indulge in a meal of her choice. Expressing her gratitude, Kyung graciously accepted the offer, intending to save it for a future culinary indulgence. Subsequently, she proceeded to place an order for her preferred risotto dish from a nearby hotel, meticulously outlining her specifications for its preparation. Upon her return from the dining excursion, Lee extended an invitation for Kyung to rectify some informational discrepancies, inviting her to occupy a seat at his desk while she attended to the task at hand. Initially hesitant, Kyung eventually acquiesced, ultimately finding herself partaking in the meal that Lee had thoughtfully arranged. As the clock ticked past office hours, Kyung embarked on her journey home, her mind abuzz with recollections of her recent dinner with Lee. Each moment replayed vividly in her memory, the delicate clink of spoons against bowls, the rhythmic symphony of chewing and swallowing, the gentle rhythm of Lee's breath, the lingering scent of his cologne, and his effortless, light-hearted banter. Amidst these reveries, she couldn't shake the notion of whether Lee had observed her during their meal. Upon arriving home, Kyung was greeted by the heartwarming sight of Hyung standing at the doorway alongside her roommate. A surge of joy filled her as she beheld her Appa patiently awaiting her return, his warm touch on her cheeks serving as a tender welcome. As they settled in for the evening, indulging in the simple pleasures of television and chicken drumsticks, Kyung, wearied from the day's toil, found herself engaged in conversation with Hyung. He inquired whether she had notified him earlier of her workload-free evening, to which Kyung explained the abrupt task assigned by her boss. Her roommate, chiming in, remarked on the peculiar sense of reunion despite their shared living arrangements. Kyung extended an offer of chicken to her roommate, who graciously declined, opting instead to relinquish the drumsticks for their shared enjoyment. It was then that Kyung disclosed her earlier dining experience with Lee, eliciting a skeptical glance from Hyung and a shocked reaction from her roommate. Her roommate playfully speculated on the unfolding K-drama-esque scenario, teasing about Lee's contrived excuse to prolong their evening. Kyung waved off the notion, attributing it to her roommate's penchant for drama consumption. She recounted Lee's explicit disinterest in her, conveyed directly to her face, emphasizing his long-standing indifference dating back to their initial encounter at the workshop. Despite this, Kyung harbored a flicker of hope, attributing Lee's recent gesture of dinner to a fleeting moment of remorse. Prompted by her roommate's curiosity, Kyung found herself grappling with her feelings towards Lee, his visage looming large in her mind's eye. Reflecting on her roommate's hypotheticals about attraction and workplace dynamics, Kyung mused on the complexities of her relationship with Lee. She likened it to working with an endearing yet obstinate pet, a dog whose charm captivates despite its stubbornness. Determined to persevere until an opportune moment for departmental transfer arises, Kyung resolved to eventually win over Lee's acceptance. Moved by Kyung's resolve, Hyung rose from his seat, signaling his departure. Sensing her discomfort, Kyung implored him to wait, expressing her intent to accompany him to the pharmacy to ease her digestion woes. As they strolled together, conversation flowed effortlessly between them, reminiscing on Hyung's month-long stay in Korea and the nostalgic echoes of their school days. Amidst the chatter, Kyung found solace in the familiarity of their bond, a steadfast anchor amidst life's ever-changing currents. Hyung talked about how he had taught her many things and how things had changed now. Back when Kyung joined the school, her classmates used to gossip about her being the topper in the statistics department. Also, her classmates used to gossip about her age and how she got here. She met Hyung there. She was comfortable with him as she was worried that she wouldn't have any friends at school. But she was relieved that Hyung was there. Hyung also asked her about the classes, if she was finding them hard. Kyung informed that she only had algebra, calculus, and linear algebra classes right now, and they were not too bad. She was enjoying the classes. She used to enjoy statistics as one can find patterns in seemingly irregular data and organize them mathematically. She was talking about finding statistics cool and how you can take something that's uncertain and put it in a logical framework. Hyung informed her that she had gotten smart now. But Kyung asked him if he was smarter than her and if he also used to do a lot of activities, also if he had many friends. Kyung told him that she wanted to be like him. Kyung used to live with his girlfriend, but as he was getting ready to meet Kyung and her friend, his girlfriend got annoyed as to why he had to go and meet Kyung at this night. But Hyung used to defend himself, saying that she's young and alone in Seoul, and he has to take care of her. She started complaining about how he went to a movie with Kyung when she also wanted to watch that movie. Hyung used to call his girlfriend's reason lame. She was annoyed and irritated by being kept at second priority while she was the girlfriend. Hyung used to defend himself by saying that he finds Kyung as his younger sister. Hyung used to stand outside his house and think that he had to explain so much over a young girl. Once Kyung and her roommate met Hyung at a restaurant when he was discharged from the military. He saw a rose in Kyung's hand and assumed it was for him, but Kyung's roommate clarified that it was given to Kyung by someone who confessed his feelings towards Kyung. Kyung told everything about this new guy, and Hyung was broken inside as if he lost something today. One day, Kyung had a breakup with her boyfriend, and Hyung came to her and tried to console her. She was upset and started saying demeaning things about herself, but Hyung was consoling her that she was the best and whatnot. Hyung started saying things from the childhood days and how he always waited for Kyung and asked her, would it be wrong if he had feelings for Kyung? But as soon as Kyung turned her face towards him, he changed his words and pretended that he was talking about her ex. Back to today's time, Hyung wanted to be at her side forever as a family, but also deep inside, he wanted something more. What hidden emotions lie beneath Lee's facade of indifference towards Kyung, and how will their evolving relationship affect their professional dynamic? Will Hyung's unresolved feelings for Kyung jeopardize their close bond? And what consequences will arise from his inner turmoil as he grapples with his desires? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.